Chapter 43. Denise banged the till closed with her hip and handed the receipt to the customer. Thanks, she smiled, but the smile faded quickly as the customer turned away from the counter. She sighed loudly, staring at the long queue forming in the front of the cash register. She would have to stand at the till all day, and she was just dying for a cigarette break. But there was no way she could slip away, so she grumpily grabbed the item of clothing from the next customer, detagged it, scanned it, and wrapped it. "Excuse me, are you Denise Hennessy?" she heard a deep voice ask, and she looked up to see where the sexy voice was coming from. She frowned as she saw a Garda before her. She hesitated while trying to think if she had done anything illegal in the past few days. When she was satisfied that she was crime free, she smiled and replied, "Yes, I am. I'm Garda Ryan, and I was wondering if you would accompany me to the station, please." It was more of a statement than a question, and Denise's mouth dropped in open in shock. He was no longer sexy Garda. He was evil, lock her up forever in a tiny cell with a luminous orange jumpsuit and noisy flip flops and no hot water or makeup on type of Garda. Denise gulped and had an image of herself being beaten up by a gang of tough, angry women who didn't care about mascara in the exercise yard at the prison, while the guards looked on and made bets over who would win. She gulped. "What for? If you could just comply what I have said, everything will be explained to you down at the station." He walked round the counter and Denise backed away, slowly looking at the long line of customers helplessly. Everybody just stared back at her, amused by the scene that was unfolding before them. "Check his ID, love," one of the customers shouted from the end of the queue. Denise's voice shook as she demanded to see his ID, which was pointless as she had never seen a Garda ID before, nor knew what a real one would look like. Her hand trembled as she held the ID and studied it closely, but didn't read a thing. She was too self conscious of the crowd of customers and staff that had gathered to stare at her with looks of disgust on their faces. They were all thinking the same thing. She was a criminal. Denise hardened, refusing to go without a fight. "I won't go until you tell me what this is about," she continued towards her again. He continued towards her again. "Miss Hennessy, if you just work with me here, then there will be no need to use these." He took out a pair of handcuffs from his trousers pockets. "But I didn't do anything," she protested, starting to panic. "We'll, well, we can discuss that down at the station, can't we?" He began to get irate. Denise crossed her arms across her chest to show how tough she was. "I said I will not go with you until you tell me what this is about." "Okay, then." He shrugged. "If you insist." He opened his mouth to speak, and she yelled as she felt the cold handcuffs snapped around her wrists. It wasn't exactly the first time she had ever worn a pair of handcuffs, so she wasn't surprised at how cold they felt, but she was in so much shock she couldn't speak. "Good luck, love," the customer shouted again as she was led by the queue. "If they send you to Mount Joy, tell my Orla I said hi, and that I'll be there to visit her next Christmas." Denise's eyes widened as images of her pacing a cell shared with a psycho murderer jumped into her mind. Maybe she would find a little bird with a broken wing and nurse it and teach it to fly to pass the years inside, just like in the movie. Her face reddened as she stepped out onto the Grafton Street, and the crowds immediately scattered as soon as they saw the Garda with the hardened criminal. Denise kept her eyes peeled to the ground, hoping nobody she knew would spot her. Her heart beat wildly, and she briefly thought of escape. She looked around quickly and tried to figure out an escape route, but she was already being led towards a minivan, the well known color blue of Gade, with blackened out windows. Denise sat in the front, and although she could sense people behind her, she sat rigidly in her seat, too terrified to turn around and meet her future fellow inmates. She leaned her head against the window sill and said goodbye to freedom. Where are we going? She asked the female police officer driving the bus, and Garda Ryan ignored her and continued to stare ahead of them. Hey, she shouted, we're going in the wrong direction. I thought you said you were taking me to the station. They continued to stare straight ahead. Hey, where are we going? No answer. I haven't done anything wrong. Still no answer. I'm innocent. God damn it. Innocent, I tell you. Then he started kicking the chair in front of her, trying to get their attention. Her blood started to boil when the female Garda pushed a cassette into the player and turned the music up. Denise's eyes widened at the choice of song. Garda Ryan turned around in his seat with a big on his face. Denise, you have been a very naughty girl. He stood up and made his way in front of her. She gulped as he started to gyrate his hips to the song Hot Stuff. She was about to give him a great big kick between his legs when she heard whooping and laughing from the back of the bus. She twisted around and spotted her sisters, Holly, Sharon, and about five other friends picking themselves up from the floor of the mini bus. She finally figured out what was really happening when her sister placed a veil on her head while screaming, Happy hen party! Oh my god, this is a bachelorette. Oh, you bitches! Denise spat at them, effing and blinding them until she had used every single curse word invented and even made up a few of her own. The girls continued to hold their stomachs, doubled up with laughter. You're so lucky I didn't kick you in the balls, Denise screamed at the gyrating Garda. Denise, this is Ken. Her sister Fiona giggled, and he's your stripper for the day. Denise narrowed her eyes and continued to curse them. I almost had a heart attack. I hope you know. I thought I was going to prison. Oh my god, what will my customers think? And my staff. Denise closed her eyes and as though she was in pain. We told the staff about it last week, Sharon giggled. They were all just playing along. Oh, the little bitches, Denise repeated. When I go back to work, I'm going to fire the lot of them. But what about the customers? Denise asked, panicking. Don't worry, her sister giggled. We told your staff to inform the customers. It was your hen party after you left the shop. Denise rolled her eyes. Well, knowing them, they deliberately won't. And if they don't, then there will be complaints. And if there are complaints, I will be so fired. Denise, stop worrying. You don't think we would have done this without running it by your boss, do you? It's okay, Fiona explained. They thought it was funny. Now relax and enjoy the weekend. Weekend? What the hell are you girls going to do to me next? Where are we going? Denise looked around at her friends, startled. We're going to Galway. And that's all you need to know, Sharon said mysteriously. If I wasn't bloody handcuffed, I'd slap you all in the face, Denise threatened. The girls all cheered at as Ken stripped out of his uniform and poured baby oil all over his body for Denise to massage into his skin. Men in uniform are so much nicer out of them, Denise mumbled as she watched him flex his muscles before her. Lucky she's handcuffed, Ken, or you would be in big trouble, the girls teased. Big trouble is right, Denise mumbled again, staring in shock as the rest of the clothes came off. Oh, girls, thank you so much, she giggled, her voice taking a very different tone than before. Are you okay, Holly? Sharon asked, handing her a glass of champagne and keeping a glass of orange juice for herself. We barely said a word since we got into the van. Holly turned to look out of the window and stared at the green fields as they flew by. The hills were dotted with little white specks as the sheep bravely climbed into new heights, oblivious to the wonderful views. Neat stone walls separated each field, and you could see the grey lines jagged like jigsaw puzzles for miles, connecting each piece of land together. Chloe had yet to find a few pieces of her own puzzled mind. Yeah, she sighed, I'm okay. Oh, I really have to ring Tom, Denise groaned, collapsing into the double bed she and Holly were sharing at the hotel room. Sharon was fast asleep on the single bed beside them. She had gone to bed much earlier than the girls, after eventually becoming bored of their drunken behavior. I'm under strict orders not to let you ring Tom, yawned Holly. This is the girls' only weekend. Oh, please, Denise whimpered. No, I'm confiscating your phone. She grabbed the mobile from Denise's hand and hid it in the press beside the bed. Denise looked as if she was going to cry. She watched as Holly lay back on the bed and closed her eyes, and she began to formulate a plan. She could wait until Holly was asleep, and then she would call Tom. Holly had been so quiet all day, it was really starting to irritate Denise. Every time Denise had asked her a question, she kept on getting yes no answers back, and every attempt to strike up a conversation had failed. It was obvious that Holly wasn't enjoying herself, but what really annoyed Denise was to see that Holly wasn't even trying, or even pretending to be. She could understand that Holly was upset, that she had a lot to deal with at the moment, but it was her hen party, and she couldn't help feeling that Holly was bringing the atmosphere down. The room was still spinning. Having closed her eyes, Holly was now unable to sleep. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, which meant that she had been drinking for almost 12 hours, and her head was pounding. Her stomach became queasy as the walls around her spun around and around and around. She sat up on the bed and tried to keep her eyes open to avoid the feeling of sickness. She turned to face Denise on the bed so they could talk, but the sound of the snores of her snores ended all the thought of communication between them. Polly sighed and looked around the room. She wanted nothing more than to go home and sleep in her own bed. She felt way across She felt her way across the bed covers in the dark for the remote control and flicked on the television. Commercial presentations adorned the screen. Holly watched as they demonstrated a new knife to slice oranges without spraying yourself in the face with the juice. The amazing socks that never got lost in the wash. Denise snored loudly beside her and kicked Holly in the shins as she changed positions. Holly winced and rubbed her leg as she watched with sympathy at Sharon's extremely frustrated struggle to lie on her stomach. Eventually, she settled on her side. Polly rushed to the toilet and hung her head over the pan, prepared for what was inevitably to come. She wished she hadn't drunk so much, but with all the talk of weddings and husbands and happiness, she had needed all the wine in the bar to prevent her from screaming at everyone to shut up. She dreaded to think what the next 2 days would be like. Denise's friends were twice as bad as Denise. They were loud and hyper, exactly how girls should be at a hen party. But Holly just didn't have the energy to keep up with them. At least Sharon had the excuse of being pregnant. She could pretend she wasn't feeling well or that she was tired. Polly had no excuse apart from the fact that she had turned into a complete bore and she was having that excuse for a time when she really needed it. She was saving that excuse for a time when she really needed it. It felt as if it was only yesterday that Polly had her own hen party, but in fact it was over 7 years ago. She had flown to London with a group of girls for the weekend to party hard, but she had ended up missing Jerry so much that she had to speak to him on the phone every hour. Back then, she had been so excited about what was to come. The future had looked so bright. Was to marry the man of her dreams and live with him for the rest of their lives. For the entire for the entire weekend she was away, she had counted the hours until she could return home. She was so excited on the flight back to Dublin, although they had only been apart for a few days. It felt like an eternity. He had been waiting for her at arrivals with a huge board in his hand saying my future wife. She had dropped her bags when she saw him and had run into his arms and hugged him so tight. She had never wanted to let go. What a luxury it was for people to be able to hold on to their loved ones whenever they wanted, she thought now bitterly. The scene at the airport had been like a part of the movie, but it was real feelings, real emotions, and real love, because it was real life which had now become a nightmare for her. Yes, she had finally managed to drag herself out of bed every morning. Yes, she even managed to get dressed most of the time. Yes, she had succeeded in finding a new job where she met new people, and yes, she had finally started buying food again and feeding herself. But no, she didn't feel ecstatic about any of those things. They were just formalities, something else to check off the things that normal people do list. None of them filled the hole in her heart. It was like her body had become one great jigsaw, just like the green fields, with their pretty grey stone walls connecting to the whole Ireland. She had started working on the corners and the edges of her jigsaw because they were easy bits, but now that they were all in place, she needed to do all the bits in between, the hard parts. But nothing she had done so far had managed to fill that hole in her heart. That piece of jigsaw had yet to be found. Holly cleared her throat loudly and pretended to have a coughing fit, just so the girls would wake up and talk to her. She needed to talk, she needed to cry, she needed to vent all her frustrations and disappointments. But what more could she say to Sharon and Denise that she hadn't already said? What more advice could they give her that they hadn't already given her? Ever since the holiday, Holly had opened up to Sharon and Denise a lot more. But now she felt that she was repeating the same old worries over and over again. Sometimes they would succeed in getting through to her, and she would feel positive and confident, only to be thrown back into despair days later. After a while, Holly tired of staring at the four walls, threw on a jump tracksuit and made her way back downstairs to the hotel bar. Charlie rolled his eyes at the table down the back of the bar and began to roar with laughter again. He wiped down the counter and glanced at his watch. 5:30, and he couldn't wait to go home. He had thought he was so lucky when the girls from the hen party had gone to the bed earlier than expected, and had been about to tidy up and go home when another gang arrived and they were still here. In fact, he would have preferred if the girls had stayed up instead of this arrogant crowd. They weren't even residents of the hotel, but he had to serve them because they included the hotel owner's daughter and her friends. Don't tell me you're back for more, the barman laughed as one of the women from the hen party walked into the room. She walked towards the bar, bumping into the wall, and tried to make her way onto the high stool. Charlie tried not to laugh. I came down for a glass of water, she hiccuped. Oh my God, she wailed, catching the sight of herself in the mirror over the bar. Charlie had to admit that she did look shocking, a bit like the scarecrow on his farm, dead dad's farm. Her hair was like straw and sticking out in all directions. Her face had black circles around them from smudging her mascara, and her teeth were stained with red wine from red wine. There you go, Charlie said, placing a glass of water on a beer mat in front of her. Thanks. She dipped her fingers into the glass and wiped the mascara off from her eyes and rubbed the wine stains from her lips. Charlie began to laugh and squinted at his name tag. As she squinted at his name tag. What are you laughing at, Charlie? I thought you were thirsty, but I would have given you a face cloth if you had asked for one. He chuckled. The woman smiled and the features softened. I find the ice and lemon helps my skin. Well, that's a new one. Charlie continued to wipe down the counter. Did you girls have fun tonight? Hoodie sighed, I suppose. Fun wasn't a word she used often anymore. She laughed. She had laughed along the jokes all night, had been excited for Denise, but she hadn't felt as if she was completely there. She had felt like the shy girl at school who was just always there, but who never spoke and was never spoken to. She didn't recognize the person she had become. She wanted to be able to stop staring at the clock whenever she went out, hoping that the night would soon be over, so she could go home and crawl into her bed. She wanted to stop wishing time would just pass and enjoy the moment instead. Are you okay? Charlie stopped wiping the counter and watched her. He had a horrible feeling she was going to cry, but he was used to it. A lot of people became emotional when they drank. I miss my husband, she whispered, and her shoulders trembled. The corners of Charlie's lips turned up into a smile. What's so funny? She looked at him angrily. How long are you here for? He asked. The weekend, she told him, twisting a used tissue around her finger. He laughed. Have you never gone the weekend without seeing him? She frowned. Only once before, she finally replied. And that was my own hen party. How long ago was that? 7 years ago. A tear spilled down her face. Charlie shook his head. That's a long time ago. Well, if you didn't, if you did it once, you can do it again. He smiled. 7 years, lucky. Isn't that what they say? Holly snorted into her drink. Lucky her ass. Don't worry. Charlie said gently. Your husband's probably miserable without you too. Oh God, I hope not, Holly replied. Well then, see, I'm sure he hopes you are not miserable without him either. You're supposed to be enjoying your life. You're right, Holly said, perking up. He wouldn't want me to be unhappy. That's the spirit, Charlie smiled and jumped as he saw his boss's daughter coming towards the bar with one of those looks on her face. Hey, Charlie, she yelled. I've been trying to get your attention for ages. Maybe if you stopped chatting to the customers at the bar and did a bit of work, me and my friends wouldn't be so thirsty. Holly's mouth dropped open with shock. That woman had a nerve speaking to Charlie like that, and her perfume was so strong it made Holly cough. I'm so sorry. Do you have a problem? The woman demanded, looking Holly up and down. Yes, actually, Holly slurred, taking a sip of her water. Your perfume is disgusting and it's making me want to throw up. Charlie started laughing and dropped to his knees behind the counter to pretend to look for a lemon. He tried to block out the sounds of the two women snapping at each other so he would stop. What's the delay here? A deep voice inquired. Charlie shot to his feet at the sound of the woman's fiance. He was even worse. Why don't you sit down, honey, and I'll bring the drinks over, said the man. Fine, at least someone is polite around here, she snapped, looking wholly up and down once more before storming off back to her table. Holly washed her hips, looking furiously boom, boom, boom from side to side as she walked. She must be a model or something, Holly decided. That would explain the tantrums. So, how are you? The man beside Holly asked, staring at her chest. Charlie had to bite his tongue to stop himself from saying anything as he poured a pint of Guinness from the tap and then allowed it to sit on the counter for a while. He had a feeling that the woman at the bar wouldn't succumb to Stevie's charms anyway, especially as she seemed to be so head over heels about her husband. Charlie was looking forward to seeing Stevie being ceremoniously dumped. I'm fine, Holly replied shortly, staring straight ahead and deliberately avoiding eye contact. And Steve, he said, holding out his hand to her. I'm Holly, she mumbled, and took his hand lightly, not wanting to be overly rude. Holly, that's a lovely name. He held her hand for much too long, and Holly was forced to look up. He had big blue sparkly eyes. Thanks, she said, embarrassed by his compliment, and her face flushed. Charlie sighed to himself. Even she had fallen for it. His only hope of satisfaction for the night was gone. Can you buy a drink, Holly? Stevie asked. No, thanks. I have one here. She sipped on her water again. Okay, well, I'm just going to bring these drinks down to my table, and then I'll be back to buy the lovely Holly a drink. He smiled at her creepily as he walked away. Charlie rolled his eyes as soon as he turned his head back. Who the hell is that idiot? Holly asked, looking bewildered, and Charlie laughed, delighted that she hadn't fallen for him. She was a lady with sense, even if she was crying because she missed her husband after only one day of separation. Charlie lowered his breath. That's Stevie, fiance of Laura, that blonde bitch who was here a minute ago. Her dad owns the hotel, which means I can't exactly tell her where to go, although I would love to. Not worth losing my job over. Definitely worth losing your job over, I should think, Cody said, staring at the beautiful Laura and thinking nasty thoughts. Anyway, good night, Charlie. You off to bed? She nodded. It's about time. It's after 6. She tapped her watch. I hope you get home soon, she smiled. I wouldn't bet on it, he replied and watched her leave the bar. Stevie followed after her, and Charlie made his way closer to the door just to make sure she was okay. Laura, noticing her fiance's sudden departure, left the table and arrived at the door at the same time as Charlie. They both stared down the corridor in the direction Holly and Steve had headed. Laura gasped at her as her hand flew to her mouth. Hey! Charlie called out angrily as he witnessed a distressed Holly pushing a drunken Steve away from her. Holly angrily wiped her mouth, disgusted at Stevie's attempt to kiss her. She backed away from him. I think you've got the wrong idea, Stevie. Go back to the bar to your fiancée. Steve wobbled slightly on his feet and slowly turned to face Laura and an angry Charlie who was charging towards him. Stevie! Laura shrieked. How could you? She ran from the from the hotel with tears streaming down her face, closely followed by a protesting Steve. Ugh, Holly said with disgust. I did not want to do that at all. Holly, don't worry, I believe you, Charlie said, placing his hand comfortingly on her shoulder. I saw what happened through the door. Ah, well, thanks very much for coming to my rescue, Holly complained. Got here too late, sorry, I must admit. I did enjoy her witnessing that. He laughed, referring to Laura. Holly smiled as she stared down the corridor at Steve and Laura screaming at each other. Oops, she said. Holly knocked into everything in the bedroom as she tried to make her way back to her bed in the darkness. Ouch, she yelped, stubbing her toe on the bedpost. Shh, Sharon said sleepily. Holly tapped Denise on the shoulder continuously to wake her up. What? Don't, Denise moaned sleepily. Here, Holly forced a mobile phone in Denise's face. Phone your future husband. Tell him you love him and don't let the girls know. The next day, Holly and Sharon went for a long walk on the beach just outside Galway City. Although it was October, the air had warmth in it, and Holly didn't need her coat. She stood and listened to the water gently lap. The rest of the girls had decided to go for a liquid lunch, but Holly's stomach wasn't quite ready for that today. Are you okay, Holly? Sharon wrapped her arm around her friend's shoulders. Holy sighed. Every time someone asks me that question, Sharon, I say I'm fine, thank you. But to be honest, I'm not. Do people really want to know how you feel when they ask how are you? Or are they just trying to be polite? Holy smiled. The time the woman across the road from my house says to me, how are you? I'm going to say to her, well, actually, I'm not very well at all, thank you. I'm feeling a bit depressed and lonely. Pissed off at the world, envious of you and your perfect little family, but not particularly envious of your husband at having to live with you. And then I'll tell her about how I started a new job and met lots of new people and how I'm trying hard to pick myself up, but am but that I am now at a loss about what else to do. Then I'll tell her how it pisses me off when everyone says time is a healer, when at the same time they also say absence makes the heart grow fonder, which really confuses me because that means the longer he's gone, the more I want him. I'll tell her that nothing is healing at all and that every morning I wake up in my empty bed, it feels like salt is being rubbed into those unhealed wounds. Holly took a deep breath. And then I'll tell her about how much I miss my husband and about how worthless my life seems without him, how unique, how uninterested I'm getting on with things without him, and I'll explain how I feel like I'm just waiting for my world to end so that I can join him. She'll probably just say, oh, that's good, like she always does, kiss her husband goodbye, hop into the car, and drop her kids to school, go to work, make the dinner, and go to bed with her husband, and she'll have done it all while I'm still trying to decide what color shirt to wear to work. What do you think? Holly finally finished and turned to Sharon. Ooh, Sharon jumped and her arm flew away from Holly's shoulder. Ooh, Holly frowned. I say all that and all you can say is ooh. Sharon placed her hand over her bump and laughed. No, silly, the baby kicked. Holly's jaw dropped. Feel it, Sharon giggled. Only placed her hand over Sharon's swollen belly and felt a tiny little movement, their eyes filled with tears. Oh, Sharon, if only every minute of my life was filled with perfect little moments like this, I would never mourn again. But Holy, nobody's life is filled with perfect little moments. And if they were, it wouldn't be perfect little moments, it would just be normal. How would you ever know happiness if you'd never experienced downs? Oh, they both shrieked as the baby kicked for a third time. I think this little boy is going to be a footballer. But his daddy, Sharon laughed. Boy? Holly gasped. You're having a boy? Sharon nodded happily, and her eyes glistened. Holly, meet baby Jerry. Jerry, meet your godmother, Holly. Ah, oh, that's so cute. That's the end of chapter 43.